Fast Forward Productions. The women are speaking.
Yeah. And I think it just goes to show that like telling people that they can do something is sometimes all the ammunition that they need. Sometimes telling people you're allowed to do that regardless of these things you think are obstacles is really all they need. I try to remember that in all of the advice that I give. Sometimes people think they want the answer, but they really just need the permission. They need someone to say, you can, you've got this, you're allowed to, whatever it is. Hi guys, it's Ashley Pollard. Welcome back to my mini-series Below 14th Street, which is my little segment about working in the fashion industry, how I got my start, but also some of my shenanigans along the way. Today's story is a heartfelt story. It's a really beautiful one. And I think it is a testament to the power of our words, especially to future generations. So I worked in the fashion industry. I had internships as soon as 2009, 2010 in New York. And I moved to New York in May of 2011. So I worked in the fashion industry for 10 years and technically longer, but I worked in the New York fashion industry for 10 years. It was a challenge. I was from St. Louis. I wasn't from a wealthy family. I wasn't from a family who had a ton of connections. And so I had to hustle to really make that happen. I also didn't care about school. I think I graduated with like a 2.25 GPA. I did not give a fuck. And I remember even my professor at school where I majored in fashion merchandising and marketing, I say sometimes that I'm a double major. I was literally one credit short of a double major. So I tell people sometimes that I double major, but I didn't graduate with a double major. So a double major in marketing and fashion merchandising. What's funny is that I went to the fashion school and my professor all the time, because people would like come to school in heels and super dolled up, and it was only women in the fashion program. And for me, I was like, I'm in college. Like, why am I getting dressed up for this? I always strolled in sweatpants and like my hair on top of my head, slippers. Like, I didn't give a shit. I remember my professor pulling me aside once and was like, you clearly don't have an interest in fashion and you aren't really getting great grades or applying yourself here. You might want to think about a different major. And what I said back to her was basically like, I'm paying for this, so I get to make those decisions. And I know I want to work in the fashion industry in New York. And I know that the stuff that I'm learning here in Missouri about how to run a department store is not exactly going to give me the experience that I want. So I plan to go to New York and get my industry experience. And no one's going to ask my GPA because I'm going to have phenomenal work experience that's going to open my doors. So thanks, but no thanks. I don't give a shit. College to me was a place to learn about like how to live in the real world, how to juggle many plates. I really saw it as like, how do I prepare for New York? I had multiple jobs to prepare for New York. I was thinking about like, what is my life going to look like? Can I emulate that in college? And how do I have fun? How do I enjoy myself? Because I'm about to bust my ass for the next 15 years. LOL, the rest of my life. I thought of college as like my gateway to New York. And it's funny because that means that when I was 18 going into college, and when I was 16, 17 prepping for college, I knew that I would move to New York. I thought that I would live there for a year to get it out of my system, to try it. I never thought I'd be a lifer there or that I would stay for as long as I did. I'm so tempted to move back like literally every day, but that's a story for another time. But I thought that I loved it enough that I would go live there for a short time and then I'd move back to St. Louis, or I'd move back to Chicago or like somewhere nearby, or like a smaller city, but still a city. And all of that is because when I went to New York for the very first time, it was 2011. And so running the math, 2011, I don't know how old I was, 12, 13. I was 13 years old. And I remember turning to my parents and saying, I'm going to live here one day. My entire life is about living here now for the rest of my life. I remember when I worked in the restaurant, I worked in a restaurant for a really long time. I like drew this skyline of New York and put it as the back of my checkbook. You know how like people would like take notes of like what your order is. And I specifically put it back there so people would be like, oh, what is that drawing? And I'd say, oh, I have dreams to move to New York. I'm saving up for it. Because almost always people would tip extra if they knew that. And they were like, here's a little extra for your New York fund. And I would put it there. So I was always telling everyone, I want to move to New York. I want to move to New York. Because you never know who has connections. By the way, use that in your life. You never know who has connections. Tell everybody what your dreams are and who you want to work with and think big, big, big. I knew always that I wanted to move to New York. But what's really cute is that I knew when I was really young that I wanted to move to New York, like way before I was 13. I mean, not way before. I think it was like 10 or so that I got the initial hook where I was like, I want to move here, or I want to move to New York. I want to work in the fashion industry, and I want to be the editor-in-chief of 17 magazine, because I was learning so much about how to live in the world from 17 magazine. And I was so grateful for them. Like, I was learning about my body. I was learning about bullying. I was bullied. And so there were articles sometimes about like how to handle bad people or like bad experiences. And 17 magazine was so big for me. And it was helping me grow as a person and see the world. And I was learning about the world through this magazine. They also had things like fashion and beauty and like how to put on makeup. And it was great. And so I always said that I wanted to work at 17 magazine because I had the impact, and I wanted to work somewhere that had impact. And so the editor-in-chief of 17 magazine was this woman named Atoosa Rubenstein. I'm probably going to get it wrong. And she had the editor's letter at the beginning. And there was always a beautiful picture of her, and her signature was this like great handwriting, and that felt so adult. And the letter always felt like she was like talking to me. And obviously, like now looking back, I'm like, well, yeah, that's copy. Yeah, no, that's good copy, is like to make sure that that person feels so singled out because the messaging is so strong. But it did, it was like, I know that you're going through a lot, and I know that there's so many changes, and I know you must be so confused in like your journey, and know that it's going to get better, whatever it was. And I was always like, okay, Atoosa, you say so. Like, I was always just like, Atoosa wrote this, and like Atoosa said that. So funny. So I wrote like right at the start of email, okay, which is like so dating myself. And we had like one of those AOL setups where it's like, like if you're older, you know what I'm talking about. And like only one person could be on the internet at the same time. And like you couldn't be on the internet and use the phone. Like this is the time that I'm talking about. So I send Atoosa an email when I'm young, like 10, 13, age range. And I'm like, hey, Atoosa, I want to steal your job. I want to be editor-in-chief of 17 magazine, and I want to take over one day. So I'm curious, like, what should I major in? Does it matter where I go to school? Do you have any tips of like things that I need to do? And I wrote her this email, and I was like, she's never going to read it, and I said like, signed Ashley Pollard, like 11 years old, St. Louis, Missouri, or something like that. And I remember my email was maybe in love at AOL.com. Isn't that so embarrassing? Like, whoa. She probably like could tell that I was 11. Anyway, it was aggressive. It was like, I'm going to steal your job, assuming that she's still going to be there in like 15 years. You know what I'm saying? Like, Ashley. But I was like, I'm going to steal your job. Do you have any tips? Anything that you could give me would be great. I'm worried about what I'm majoring in, and I'm worried about if the school that matters, like all of this stuff. Probably way too heavy of thoughts to have when you're 11 years old, but here I am. And she wrote me back. And I always remembered thinking like either she wrote me back or one of her team members wrote me back. But regardless, the act was cool enough. And I remember thinking that, like, I was like, it's one of the two and they're both cool. Like, I'm fine with however this transpired. And so she wrote me back, personalized. Hi, Ashley, it's Atoosa. Thank you so much for your letter. And I can't wait to duke it out for my job one day in the future. And honestly, I hope you get it, or something like that. And she had great advice. She said things like, it doesn't really matter what you major in. Make sure that you're majoring in something that you love, because you have to go to school for 4 years. And even better if you can apply that to the fashion industry, but major in something that you love. And the way that you treat people is the most important thing and will be remembered. Don't be a bully. Be gracious. Work hard. Ask for help. Just like your standard, like give a kid advice kind of situation. I think she also said, like, it doesn't matter where you go to school. I even said in there, like, I don't really come from money. I don't have a lot of money. And so let me know if I shouldn't even try, or something like that. And she was like, always try. You're allowed to leave the town that you grew up in. You're allowed to have big dreams. You're allowed to do all of these things. Like, I could like tear up just thinking about it. And she wrote me back, and I held on to that letter, and I read it just every day, like multiple times a day. And I just was like, oh my God, Atoosa Rubenstein. And I like, to the fact that I still remember her name, and I was so young. And I remember when we were visiting New York, I was like, do you think that we could like meet her? Honestly, I probably could have. If I wrote her and was like, I'd love to meet you, I bet I probably could. But yeah, and I think it just goes to show that like telling people that they can do something is sometimes all the ammunition that they need. Sometimes telling people you're allowed to do that regardless of these things you think are obstacles is really all they need. I try to remember that in all of the advice that I give. Sometimes people think they want the answer, but they really just need the permission. They need someone to say, you can, you've got this, you're allowed to, whatever it is. I keep blocking the microphone, so I hope that you guys can hear me. But this is the cool part of the story, and I'm going to use my phone for this part, is that I wrote her last year. No, this is 2020, July 2020. And I said, this sounds so crazy. I've had such a successful 10 years in the fashion industry. It's all because of you. When I was younger, I took this leap. I don't even know if you wrote me back or if someone on your team wrote me back, but it meant so much to me. It was the first time I got permission to like go after these big dreams. I never forgot it. I never got a chance to thank you, but I wanted to say genuinely how much your leadership to young girls had affected one in particular. And she wrote me back the next day and said like, thank you for shining your light on me. It turned my gray day inside out. It was raining that day and she was in the city. You know, she also said, which I think is sweet, I hope along with success, you found self-satisfaction, contentment, and peace. I think that's so powerful. And said, like, sending you so much love, respect, and gratitude. I hope our paths cross, and when they do, please say hi live, okay? Just like the sweetest message. And I hope that not only you give that to others, that permission, that acceptance, and that grace, but even her response back to me is just so kind. Like, cool, you found success, but like, are you happy? Are you good? I love that even, you know, such a show of leadership just there as well. And so anyway, I just wanted to share that story because I think it's a pivotal one on my journey. But I think there's something we can all kind of take from what she said to me, but also from the experience in general and about how we connect to each other and how it is so important to have like a connection to the world at large. But what really moves the needle are these like really intimate one-on-one moments that we can have with each other. And I think that both are really important to make sure that the community, the world, the global community is one that's connected, but also that our intimate one-on-one connections are also viewed through the same lens of being important as well. Anyway, Atoosa, if you're listening to this, thank you so much again. And for all of you listening, thank you so much for everything, for listening, for supporting, for leaving reviews, for sending it to your friends. It means the world. And I'm loving this series. So leave a review. Let me know if you're loving it too. Shoot me a DM, post it on your stories and tag me so I can see it. And I'll see you guys next week for another episode of Below 14th Street. Before we go, there's a couple things I want you to remember on these episodes. I'm obviously all about helpful information and telling stories about my life. And part of being a human telling her story means that even though I'm trying my best, my memory may not always be serving me perfectly. Some facts in here might end up being inaccurate or changed or incorrect. You know, if I get a date wrong or a specific place where I was at, just know that I'm doing my best to recall from memory and piecing these stories together from you. There's also some cases where I may have changed a name or something that can refer back to a specific person so that I don't cause controversy with someone or a brand and make sure that everybody is protected. Doesn't change the point of these stories. They're all still my own. And these are all actual experiences from my life. So the stories themselves are not fabricated. They're just maybe some details that maybe I got wrong from memory or maybe that I'm trying to cover up so that everybody who listens feels protected and we can laugh and enjoy ourselves. Thank you for listening.